Hello everyone and welcome back to Trekyards Mission Briefing, your weekly dose of a ship from the Trek universe. We look at it, theorise, discuss, could be one of those, could be one of anything else, could be in the big multiverse of Dimensional, in Star Trek Online, in Fan, in FASA, and anything and everything. We even look at ships that might not have made it to the screen. Hint, 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 hint. Stuart, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing, Commander?
I'm good. This is going to be a fun one, but what are we doing? Put them out of their misery, even though they've already read the title and it's in the thumbnail. But they still don't know.
This is like a cool little side note in Star Trek history,
Yes.
something that was developed, animated even, tested, and never used, which was sad. But it's from the series Voyager, and that would be the Aero Shuttle, which is a little ship, an auxiliary craft that attaches to the bottom where the captain's yacht on the bigger ships go. And this was something I would have really liked to see, and I think it's even kind of cooler than the Delta Flyer, dare I say it.
How cool is it that Eagle Moss made a model of it?
Yeah.
And it's a really nice model as well, so
It is cool.
3D. Yes. This is, like you said, one of those very strange ones, because just like the D4 at Enterprise, it was conceptualized, written, drawn, commissioned, made, animated, and then not used. So this is the real 3D model of the Aero Shuttle from the show. It was from the team behind the show. It wasn't actually from the show, obviously. And as you know, there was that. If you guys know, there's that one. And we'll talk about it later. There was that one bit of footage that was made by Mojo Lebowitz and Rob Bonshun of the Delta Flyer, the Aero Shuttle launching, to show you what it could look like. And we'll reference that a little bit later. And that's really the only time we got to see it launch. And in fact, that actually was released from the archives when we started Trekyards. So we saw that. It was like a blessing when it came out, because we finally had some footage of this elusive Aero Shuttle. But yeah, so like I said, lucky to have the original model. I think it's a great looking model. What do you think of the design, Stuart?
I think it's a very functional, cool looking ship. I mean, it's very reminiscent of the runabouts, and I think that was its main purpose, to be designed much the same size and function as a runabout, but a little more functionality than a runabout. Something designed specifically for atmospheric flight, and for exploring surfaces of planets and things like that. So I think they did a fantastic job. You see the tie-ins with the runabout, but it's so different that you don't just immediately think runabout ripoff. It's not.
One of the funny things about this ship is that really the ship is just this. And it was seen in every single episode of Voyager. So this is the basis, and while Rick Sternbach, who designed it, did design parts of it, it was, I believe, a combination of him and Rob and the team that finished the top bit, because there was no top, it was never seen. So this is kind of, what came out of that. And as you say, so it's very limited by the need to fill that physical gap in the hull, and to be realistic in the sizing. And they were going to use a runabout, the bridge, the set, as you said, to make the set, I guess, double in value, because then you could save money because you're both using it. So therefore the front has to be a runabout as well. So I guess it's kind of limiting what you can do, but the creativity, I think, on how this shape looks now, you're right, it's you can see it's Delta Flyer, damn it, guys, I'm so sorry. Runabout routes, but far more advanced, I think it's fair to say, and pushing that next generation of technology. Yes. I like those engines. What? Those are really cool warp engines.
They are, absolutely. And that's one thing that, even with the captain's yacht and stuff from the Enterprise D, they didn't have warp engines. It had warp sustainers, so it slowly dropped out of warp as if it was launched at warp. This thing was very capable of being a warp ship on its own, so nice little addition. I think it would have been great for Voyager. They could have used it in multiple instances as a separate fighter to help defend the ship, but
And it is worth mentioning that it was great that Voyager kept the tradition of Captain's Yacht, and kept the tradition of not seeing the Captain's Yacht, the irony, because the Enterprise D had one, Voyager had one, the Nova class even had one, I can't remember what it's called, Wave Rider, sorry, and then obviously Enterprise E had one, which we saw. And the story behind not using this, as you guys may know, is that they built it, but then the Enterprise E was coming out, and the productions team said, yeah, you can't use a Captain's Yacht, because we're going to use a Captain's Yacht, we don't want them to get confused. And it's like,
who's going to get confused? Anybody watching both is going to have the knowledge at least to realize that.
Yes.
Anyway.
Certainly a flaw, and so they built the Delta Flyer instead. And I'm a huge fan of the Delta Flyer, and I think it was beautifully well done. But it does not detract from the fact this should have, and literally did exist, because it was on the hull. You know what I mean? It is there. I don't know if you remember the classic excuse that Rick and the team give for why it was never used, like in canon. Do you remember the reason?
Oh yeah, it wasn't finished when
Yeah.
they launched Voyager, which is cool. It was just basically an empty shell,
Yeah.
and that was, or there was a dummy placed in there because this one was being constructed elsewhere and was going to be docked later.
Yeah.
So it was just a dummy plate over top. But we can talk a little bit more about that later because we have talked with Rick about it and the possibilities of what could have been, and yeah, I think it's worth talking about in a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go on to the next picture. This is a shot of it from the back, and again here you can see a very runabout tie-in with the back windows. The same style and everything. They could have used the same set that they did from TNG, not from DS9 because it was never seen in DS9.
It's true.
Ironically enough,
It's true.
but the rear of the runabout was seen in TNG. So again, missed opportunities, but I really like the way this thing looks, and yeah.
It has both more curves, I feel, than the runabout, but also is also blocky because those wings are very blocky, but it has nice curves. It's kind of like that in between blocky step of it's not going towards the Nova class and Prometheus where it really is those sweeping curves. It's still a blocky curve, which is the evolution for the Voyager evolution, if that makes sense. It's that in between step, and the Delta Flyer obviously then has that really smooth thing. So it's kind of in between step of the design of Star Trek where they weren't going fully organic shapes. They were still doing some blocky things.
Yeah, and even the back there, beneath or behind the windows, it's very reminiscent of the back end of Voyager, where the shuttle bay is, kind of like a landing deck almost.
So I see I see two interesting things here, but the one big one I see is that, and what do you think about this once I say it out? The impulse engines for the red glows are actually integrated into the warp nacelles.
Yes.
What do you think about that?
I think it's a natural. It seems like a natural idea, a progression, something they would do, integrate both engines into one. And I don't know why it hasn't been done on a lot of other designs, to be honest, because I think it would have really helped things out. But then that ties into TOS though, where they didn't want the engines to generate thrust per se, to show advanced technology. So, but I think as a rule and as realism dictates, that's probably what they would do in most instances, have both kind of on the same element. I would believe, because you got to reroute warp power usually to the impulse engines anyway. There's always some tie in there, so this just makes sense, especially in a smaller craft like this. So
it gives it more of a jet feel, because it does give that feeling of actual thrust, which is very unusual for Star Trek. But it's an Aero Shuttle. It's a captain's yacht, but it's called the Aero Shuttle. It is there for more orbital and more atmospheric things. So a literal thrust. There might be some part of that. I mean, and you'll see the picture later on. This is a very flat ship. I think probably part of it is to integrate everything to give it that flat profile, so it's not very aerodynamic, but closer to that. It can glide and things. But in terms of design, I love how it's integrated. I love the front bits, the smidge of visible warp coil, but how it's all integrated. It shows technology. This probably isn't a super fast ship because you've only got a certain amount of coil, but runabouts and Type 6 shuttles are smaller than this, and we'll see later on much smaller, and they can still get to high warp. So coils aren't the problem, And the second thing I noted was the very large RCS thrusters on either side of the wing, literally just taken off from Voyager because I recognise the design, but they're huge comparative to the scale of the ship. There are other RCS throughout the ship. That shows this is a maneuverable beast. They've got these big chunky things. What do you think about that as a design choice?
It's very bold. It is designed for atmospheric flight. So if those would really help maneuverability, I'm sure. This thing could roll on a dime, and probably very advanced for tangling with fighters, like let's say the Maquis Raiders, something like that. This was sent out to intercept the Maquis, so I wonder if they had that in mind as a possibility, because the Maquis Raiders are smaller and they're very maneuverable. So this could have been designed to specifically be very maneuverable to tangle with them.
No, the problem is obviously the Intrepid class is just a science ship, so I would think more on the lines of this is, the science. This is designed to go into the atmosphere to explore, you know, to get those more detailed readings and things. 'Cause it's clearly a lot larger than a normal shuttle. I mean, and even larger than a runabout. I mean, that extra bulk on either side. You can put a few more rooms in there.
But then to have such big RCS thrusters, you wonder why for a scientific craft. They could just be placeholders too. Then maybe they were thinking of changing them later to a little bit smaller. Who knows?
I don't know. But it's a cool shot, and again, it's amazing we get to use these real 3D models from the show because you get to talk real details. It's amazing. But the next picture is a reverse shot, again, just to give a sense of that flat profile, because it is very, very flat and hell. And again, I love how the impulse engine is integrated. Feels fast, and it has that familiar Star Trek aesthetic with that runabout in front. But all those curves of the top, and it's a neat design. I really like it.
Yeah, I do too. It's very aerodynamic, and it would make a great atmospheric ship. The wings are a little blocky and chunky for that, yes. But you don't really need those to generate lift when you have advanced technology like that. So,
yes.
All right, let's move on to the next picture. This is a shot of it from the front. Good to see a nice little deflector there, which is cool.
It's so little. It's so little, and just boop. Here's the deflector. You know, I would have had it bigger personally. I'd have made it more of a statement with that. It's very, very small.
Yeah.
It clearly is just the Voyager deflector / secondary deflector. But it's a bit too small for me. I mean, it's functional, it shows advancement, but why not give it something more beefy so it can do more?
Yeah, and you got that whole front end to work with. You could have made that whole thing a cool looking deflector. Another cool feature of this one is the RCS thrusters on the side sticking out of the main body there.
Yeah.
Probably it looks like it would be used to slow down very quickly should the need arise in an atmosphere, because they're pointed straight forward. So, again, cool placement of the RCS thrusters.
You didn't need them, but by having that little extra bump, I know it's obviously in the Voyager, the top, the bottom of the hull, but you can put phasers there. No, put RCS thrusters. Make it. It's a science ship. It's a captain's yacht of a science ship. Make it a maneuverable, fast, fit for purpose. One thing I like that really connects to Voyager is all of the smaller greeblies and nurnies just in components, or in zones, throughout the sides of the ship. Obviously it gives detail, but in Voyager they're meant to be like sensor palettes and things. That many sensors around the ship, clearly giving a sense, not only linking to the Voyager specifically for the details, but giving a sense it is a scientific research vessel.
Yeah, because those could be sensor palettes and things. Cool. Going on to the next picture. Now this raises an interesting question that you kind of just mentioned. Phasers. Where are there phasers? Does this thing have any weapons at all? It doesn't really seem like it to me. There's no micro torpedo launchers like the Delta Flyer has that are visible.
Now I could go to the Eagle Moss magazine, which is right over there, but this is a conceptual piece. Obviously, we can physically see. I mean, they could be in the hull, but that's not a staple of Starfleet design. I mean, how do you feel if this was an unarmed vessel?
I think that'd be odd. I mean, even the shuttles, earlier shuttles have at least one or two phasers just for self-defense, right? But there's no visible phaser strips that I could see.
I think this is a likely point where they just didn't add them to the model because it didn't get that far. This is probably the approval version. This was never in full production, and I'm sure Rick added some to his sketches. We just don't see them in this iteration. That's my guess. But yeah,
that'd be my guess as well.
But it certainly needs a few. I'm not sure where you'd put them exactly. Probably you could find places, but they would have to stick out a bit, obviously, wouldn't they? They couldn't be integrated too well with these shapes, I don't think.
Yeah. I can see a lot of good placement points for them, but yeah.
But I do like this front view. To show how flat it is. It had to be a flat bottom because it is a flat bottom in the show.
Yeah.
But I love those warp facades, those engines, how simple and sleek they are, and I love the front view, and it's still runabout, but got all these extra details that make it feel part of the same fleet, and just it's a cool fighter. I mean, imagine if this had also been a fighter along with Peregrine, and obviously upgrade its weapons a bit, maybe change its function slightly, point its its wings a little bit. Could this have been a secondary fighter type, do you think, with Peregrine?
Yeah, this is a perfect design for a fighter type craft. Although I got to pull a Tom Paris here and say that fins on each of those nacelles would be cool. Fins sticking up or even in or out. Anything to make it look a little cooler. That would have been neat. The flat profile, I don't know, it doesn't really do it for me. I need something to make it look sporty and hot roddy.
Third warp nacelle on the top with a third fin.
Oh man, see, now you're talking. Yeah.
I mean, this almost says to me bomber, because the Paragons are pretty small, and while they have a lot of torpedoes as part of their loadout, this has got a lot more internal volume. So how interesting that'd be if you put some torpedoes to the bottom, made it a bomber, this bigger craft, landing craft. You've got the space.
We're the United Federation of Planets. We come in peace. Bomb those motherfrackers.
Yes, that's what we... Anyway, Stuart, the next picture is a fun one, talking scale, and this is, the studio asset of the Type 9, the Type 6, the Delta Flyer, the Aero Shuttle, a fan version of the Runabout, and a very, very good fan version of the other captain's yacht, but scaled correctly. What do you think?
Seems right to me. It does tie in with that size of the Runabout, which is what I anticipated. I do notice, though, that the Runabout has 5 windows at the back. I thought it only had 4. So my apologies on my earlier comment. I thought it was much more similar.
This is the fan version. We do have a real version, but it wasn't scaled properly. I have to fix that, really. What I like about this, it shows that evolution of design, and in fact it shows this iterative step, because Star Trek obviously is a TV show with people designing these things. So it goes from the Type 6, the very boxy, then the Type 9, and I guess then the Runabout, then Type 9, then the Aero Shuttle, and the Delta Flyer, then the other captain's yacht. So there's an interesting progression of the shapes, and you can see the boxy and not boxy. And the Aero Shuttle kind of has an in-between step, but it shows how still boxy it is compared to, say, the Delta Flyer. But again, it's bigger. It feels more functional to me, and especially compare it to, like, say, this Type 6 or Type 9. I mean, those shuttles are literally a very shuttle-y shuttle. Mm-hmm. The Aero Shuttle is a real spaceship. If you have that yourself, as we said for the Delta Flyer, that's a hot rod in itself. And it is worth pointing out the Delta Flyer obviously has scale conundrum to it.
Yes.
This is the default size from studio asset as loaded. So that's all I'm going to say about that. That's what it thinks it should be. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and we've talked about that in our previous Delta Flyer episodes, if you want to check those out. So, I have no problem with this. It's cool seeing, because we saw the inside of the Calypso.
Yeah.
In which movie was that? Insurrection. Thank you. So we know the size in there. So you can kind of, with the Runabout and that, you can kind of relate to the Aero Shuttle as to what it would be like. So this is very cool. I love that they're adding warp nacelles to their auxiliary craft now instead of just warp sustainers. So,
and one thing I hadn't thought of is that if you actually look at the dimensions are very similar to the Runabout, and that wasn't exactly intentional when they built. They didn't go into the bottom of the Voyager details, say, let's put a captain's yacht in there, let's make it a Runabout size. Like, they said, oh, we've got this design, let's use the Runabout cockpit. But if you look at it, the internal volume is about the same, and even the warp nacelles are about the same. So you can see it was designed probably at a very similar time to use parallel technology, just different, different priorities. But it's very, very comparable in technology. It looks like to me, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have the Delta Flyer, obviously a lot smaller, and I would say Delta Flyer is more advanced and more powerful than both a Runabout and a captain's yacht. At least the Aero Shuttle. I don't know how you feel about that, but I always thought it was much more powerful for what it was.
Well, yeah, integrated Borg technology as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it did have some enhanced systems. So yeah, I agree. Let's go to the next picture. It shows it from the side. It's kind of an odd-looking ship from the side. But it still kind of fits in with the design of all the other ones, so I have no problem with that at all. I mean, it looks very cool as part of a fleet.
It kind of makes you appreciate how big the Enterprise E captain's yacht is. It's actually a pretty substantial, ship that you can hang out in. There's probably a big master bedroom with an ensuite. There's a whole lot of nice things in there.
The ironic thing about the Enterprise E's captain's yacht is it actually looks like a yacht. It could be a boat. Literally. You could just throw that on water, you'd be good. I mean, it's got that yacht design to it, so...
Not going to disagree. And it does show that these are both captain's yachts, but the E is a bigger ship, and it's just that iterative bigger step. but it still feels right, you know. And again, it shows how small the shuttles are. And that's why I never considered, you know, runabout or a shuttle to be a starship, because they are very small. But actually, when you look at it compared to these other advancements, yeah, the runabout is, you know, you can definitely fit enough people on it, the Aero Shuttle. Do you think it fits in the same fleet, or is it because it is a different purpose, a different thing, that it can look different enough, or is it just about right?
I think it's not only that it's a different, like it's on a scientific vessel, but it's also because the Intrepid was kind of a step out of the box for the for Starfleet, kind of like their next advancement, if you will, because they had the articulating warp nacelles and things.
Environmental gel packs, big step for them.
Yeah, exactly. Which never really, I don't know if it ever really caught on per se. I think it was more of an experimental thing, but you can see that a little bit here, a little bit different hull coloring, and just that kind of more blunt shape at the front. It's it feels very Voyager-esque, as opposed to First Contact E. You know, a little bit different aesthetics as far as those two go. So, yeah,
it's cool though. But the next picture is a fan internal LCARS piece that we always like to, or we try to like to include, and again, fan designed. What do you think about this?
It's odd because it's putting the impulse engines, looks like in the main body, and not at the end of the nacelles.
Yes, obviously you've got to remember that this is one of the ships that there was no reference for.
Yeah.
Really. Yeah. So everything's fan extrapolation. And it does feel a bit too small to me. I mean, they're implying that it's just got a single room with a single pilot chair. It feels too small.
Yeah, and it's got like the conference room where the windows are at the back. It's got it in the middle of the ship, and it looks like the impulse engines are where the windows are supposed to be on this one, at least.
Yeah, I just thought it was worth including to see what was there. And it's still, and the warp core's still on the top, like the runabout was, and I believe that there was detailing for that.
That's very cool. I love looking at these. They're always interesting to look at. So if we go on to the next picture, we got a shot of it from the test animation.
Yes. Now I might have a little treat for you, Stuart, here. So we mentioned earlier that there was a test animation done by Rob and Modo just to show what it would do. And it's a couple of shots, shows it launching, shows it coming to an atmosphere. And it was amazing to see. But obviously it's low resolution from YouTube, whatever. Well, amazingly, we happen to have the scene files for that, so I've gone ahead and re-rendered a couple of stills because you know what, we want high definition. So the next picture is that frame in high def.
Oh, beautiful.
And obviously, it's not really seeing much as of yet, but I just wanted to tease it to the audience. But you can see straight away the bottom of the Voyager hull, what is there, what's integrated. You know, it's one of those things that you could easily miss it. But it is a spaceship. You know what I mean? But this is where the next picture, and again, you remember this from the trailer, don't you, Stuart? It launches, it looks so cool. And this is the resolution we had. This is all that was there. Stuart, say the word.
Next picture.
And that's in high def.
Oh, wow.
Same shot, same frame. And again, this is an test animation done, 20 years ago with a non-full res version of Voyager. So take that with the grain of salt. But there it is in high def glory, leaving the bay. What do you think?
That's very cool. I mean, I always used to, when I watched Voyager, I always wondered what that shape was because I never really knew when I first saw the show.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. The only problem I have is the way that the hull curves up. You would think that the wings would be articulated, much like the nacelles on Voyager, to articulate up to fit in there. And I don't see any articulation points on the wings. So if they go straight out, it doesn't really fit into that curvature for me. I don't know what you think about that.
I love that you're bringing that up, but I don't think that curve... I mean, it's probably just like that curve. It's not that dramatic, and the hull wouldn't take much for the flat struts to then be slightly up. But that's a great point. You're right. It needs to integrate seamlessly, and it shouldn't necessarily by the shapes. But you know, I like seeing it launch. It feels very 3D. It kind of feels like... Can you imagine if it gets destroyed, this annoying hole in the front of your ship forever? I mean, that would not be... That's a
good point. Maybe that's why they didn't use it, because... I mean, the Delta Flyer got destroyed and rebuilt, and this is a lot more materials to build this, I'm sure. So
Can you imagine though? You go up to an alien ship and you hail them, and they say, "Oh, I'm Captain Jamie." They say, "Oh, nice to meet you. Do you know there's a hole in your ship?" And they say, "Yes, we know there's a hole in our ship." And
that would have been a funny ongoing joke, actually.
just embarrassing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and like I said, I'm very, very happy that we got these scenes to be able to remake this stuff for you in high def. But let's go one step further. The next picture is same scene, but I've moved the camera. This is what it would look. This is the sort of shot it would look like from the show if it was doing a full launch sequence and leaving. How does that look?
That's very cool. That's very dynamic. I think that would have added a lot to the show. I would have loved to see this kind of on a semi-regular basis. Even if it was just as often as seeing the Enterprise saucer separate, you know, something that's not a very common occurrence, but at least something we saw once or twice in the series would have been amazing to see.
Is it just me, or does it feel smaller now when you put it in the context of the ship? / Voyager now feels bigger because it just.
I think the other way around. I think Voyager seems smaller now because I'm thinking that as runabout size, and I thought that Voyager was quite a bit bigger. So I'm thinking the exact opposite way.
Fair enough. But it's just cool. Yeah, it would have been an embarrassing hole, but I'm sure there's like plating that you could, seal it up. I mean, the Enterprise E, it wasn't so much. The Enterprise E, it connected and then locked, but it was just a vaguely visible hole, but it was still part of the geometry. This is a flat surface with a hole out of it.
Yeah.
So you'd think they'd have some plating. Imagine if a torpedo hit the inside of that bay. That's even worse. How do you pair that in a
Yeah, I'm sure there'd probably be something that would close over it. And that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, what we talked to Rick about, that the ship actually wasn't completed by the time Voyager launched, so they had like a dummy thing in there. And wouldn't it have been cool, though, to see Seven of Nine and Tom Paris working on this empty shell of a ship that was there and getting it ready for launch as opposed to building the Delta Flyer. It'd be cool to see like this empty shell and them in it, installing stuff, and I think that would have been very, very neat.
Do both. That would have been mine.
Yeah.
I mean, how amazing would this have been as a season 1 episode? You need to, this ship has a captain's yacht, which would have been a great revelation. Like, there's another ship in Voyager. They use the shuttles to help fix it. Build. They use shuttles to then help combine things outside, and it builds, and it because there's not really a hangar that can build it. There's a hangar that it goes into, but you obviously can't touch the outside of it. There's some limitations. So obviously, you land on planet, you put it there, you finish it. How cool a season 1 episode, then you obviously use it, like you say, as a source separation, and then suddenly you need this really advanced fighter to be able to get in the atmosphere. This thing is not designed for that, and you can't, retrofitting a space frame is different to building a purpose-built. Yeah. This is why all the 3D models I know, they always rebuild a model as opposed to altering, because then you're not getting the flaws in the geometry, you're not getting the problems that existed, plus you're faster when you're working better. So imagine you have both, and then suddenly you have these great scenes when they one launches, the other comes, and they both fly together. I mean, that could have been a really great sequence.
I was just waiting for you to pause to say that. It would be cool to see Voyager, the Aero Shuttle, and the Delta Flyer kind of flying in formation, going into a battle or something. Because you got 3 ships as opposed to 1 then.
Well, and then you launch the last remaining Type 6 and the last remaining Type 9, and this whole little, everything launched at one time of this, and you ask how the hell they fit everything in the ship, and they have this little fighter contingent and Voyager, and this is like this last ditch move. I mean, how amazing! Like, this is everything on the line we're throwing into this battle, and they all get blown up, and we're like, oh no, we can't fix this.
Yeah, but I think having a ship this size as an auxiliary craft would have been very helpful for Voyager on numerous occasions. So
there was a time when Seth, whatever his name was, took Janeway's shape. Why didn't she just go and take the Aero Shuttle? I mean, she's the captain. What better? You can't close the cargo. You can't close the hangar doors compared to, Anyway, the next picture is the first picture. Is the last picture. A beautiful view of her. I really like this ship. It's always been an interesting one. I've seen it for years, but only very vaguely. And it's cool to have a physical one. It's amazing to have the CG, and I cannot wait to the full episode with Rick, and give it the animation in high def. That it needs, and see it do some cool things. That's what I'm excited for.
Yeah, I totally agree. This was a real missed opportunity in my mind for Star Trek. I really would have loved to see this thing realized, and now that you've got the files and all that jazz, we can see some animations of this thing.
That's what we're here for, Stuart. That's what Trekyards is about. Filling those gaps.
Indeed. Filling the gaps in Star Trek history. The what ifs. The what could be's. But anyways, I think that's it for this mission briefing, guys. So guys, if you have a chance, go over and visit trekyards.com. There's a donate button there if you want to make a one-time donation to help us out. That'd be greatly appreciated. And as always, like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, all that jazz.
Or if you want to help on a monthly basis, which helps keep the lights on, keep the show coming to you, give me the time I need to render these amazing things for you all, then go to Patreon, which is a YouTube monthly donation service you give to help creators like us, and then we keep creating stuff for you. So win-win. So give $5, $10, $15, $100 a month. It all goes towards the costs of this show. So until next time, guys, this is Connor Cookins.
And Captain Foley.
And we will see you next time on Trekyards Mission Briefing. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.